Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at the weekly metagame breakdown for the best decks in standard best of 3. If you're looking for best of 1, I posted it yesterday because the qualifier play-in was best of 1, so I wanted to get that video out. The qualifier play-in for best of 3 standard is this upcoming Friday, and then the actual weekend event, so 1 week and from today. The Saturday will be the actual qualifier weekend. It's standard best of 3. So these are some ideas, get people to test ahead of the upcoming event. So we'll look at a bunch of different decks here. Just general note, like there's fringe decks like the mono green Tifa deck that can win some games here and there. They've put up some reasonable stuff. There's like a bird deck that did a 5-0. There's a legends deck that did like a 5-0, but they're just not consistent enough. So we'll kind of take a look there, unless there's like a larger sample beyond the singular 5-0, which can at times just be a little luck. Once you start seeing more regular, then you can kind of bring it up. Or if there's a 40-50 game sample size, it extrapolates a little bit better. So we're getting the data from Untapped GG. What you see on the screen, there seems to be some sort of weird classification thing. You'll see the popularity today. Izzet's not showing up right now. The Izzet Cauldron deck's probably one of the best decks in the format. So I pulled up a list for reference. I do think that's probably one of the best lists amongst Dimir. So referencing that, I'm going to reach out to the Untapped guys to see what the classification, because like no Izzet deck lists are coming up in best of 1 or best of 3 at least, no matter what parameters I put in. So the VV Cauldron deck for reference. So that'll be there. That's probably, if I do play in the event, I got to try the best of 3 qualifier, scrubbed out of the best of 1 one. Went a little too metagamey and got metagamed out of my metagame. Tried Azorius Control and Izzet Control, just didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So let's jump into it. Dimir is the most popular deck after the reset from Diamond Mythic rank, making about a quarter of your games. Golgari Midrange has an uptick at about 15%. Naya Yuna, 7%. It is not doing well. It's at 50% is the highest one. I'll show you the reference so people don't ask about it, but there's 2 versions of the deck, and 50% is the highest win rate one. You have Abzan Yuna at about 6%, Azorius Control at 6%, Gruul Delirium at 5%, Jeskai Control, just basically Jeskai Dragons at 5%, and then Golgari Roots at just a shade under 5%. We have 29,000 games in the last week played from Diamond to Mythic rank. Dimir Midrange has kind of 2 flavors that we're going to look at. Because it's the most popular deck, I want to show you both so you have reference to it. This one here is at 71%. So this version here has got 3 Tidebinders in the main. We see the 3 Cecils, 1 Gix Command main. We also see a Jill, Shiva's Dominant, just kind of a tempo one. It gives you like a bounce on 1 target non-land permanent. You can flip it itself, makes a creature unblockable, and then taps all opponent's creatures, and then kind of flips, and then you get to bounce something again. So you kind of get that back and forth kind of effect. We're also seeing a Lily in the main, just in the grindier, slower matchups. Lily can kind of grind out. Anoint with Affliction, go for the throat, cut down as removal, some Phantom Interference as well in the mana base. We see Lord Skitter as a way to have some graveyard hate in a creature form, along with Strategic Betrayal. Cheap hand hate, cheap counters, Spell Pierce, Disdainful Stroke, Anoint, just more flexible removal. I got beat by best of 1 opponent was playing Dimir with Duress and Spell Pierce main. They went to Duress me. I flashed in a Mind Splice Apparatus and they Spell Pierced me too. So it was just one of those opponent had it all type days. The end, just catch all removal, good against like Jace, any card that like against the slower decks that are playing fewer numbers. You see grindier matchups, you have Aklazotz, Gix Command is another sweeper, and in the grindier matchups you have Overlord of the Flood Pits as well. You'll sometimes see like Blot Out. It was just really good against Kaido as well. So there's that version, and there's this version here at 69%. So the big thing in this matchup, we're seeing no Preachers in actually either of these lists. You'll sometimes see Preachers in the sideboard, which you'll see here. But Feybloom Trick is very, very good in the mirror. Basically lets you tap down something so they can't get in that attack, but it also makes you 2 flying bodies with 1 power, which Spyglass Siren, Fairy Mastermind, Flood Pits Drowner, just lots of ways to kind of chump their smaller things. So this card was always kind of the edge card in the mirror. Seeing Flood Pits Drowner in here, obviously your Enduring Curiosities kind of complement it in there. You have Tishana's in here in the sideboard for activated abilities, Preachers for the Dimir Midrange matchups, the Gix command in this one where you saw 1/1, main board, sideboard. These are both in the sideboards. Neutralize the Guards, just really good in the mirror as well, or any kind of the Convoke style decks, just only hits your opponent's creatures. Blot Out, like I mentioned, hits the big thing, Spell Stutter, cheap counters, negates, so no Spell Pierces, but you have like the Duresses, fewer kind of counter spells in this version here, leveraging the Spell Stutters instead. Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Hate, Cut Down, just smattering of various removal spells. Golgari Midrange, 62%. So obviously you have your Demon Pile and Holy Annex in here, draws you cards, makes you demons. You have Lumbering World Wagon to kind of get you ahead on mana. Demon Wall works nicely with the Unholy Annex. And this version is just trying to go slightly bigger in terms of mid-range decks with Outrageous Robbery as your payoff from ramping. You'll notice a number of creatures that can crew wagon on its own. So things like Suruk can crew it, Sentinel very easily can crew it with the map tokens. Curse Rakshasha is another way to crew it. And then just your Elf into Lumbering Wagon can get you ahead on mana. And then a bunch of removal spells to complement it. Nissa for the grindier mid-rangey matchups, Domain, Yuna, stuff like that. Scavenger Regent. Sweeper that basically can be shuffled into your library, used over and over. You got Lily for the grindier matchups. Choking Miasma as a sweeper. Blot Out for Kaido's bigger stuff. Terra Sunder, Artifact Enchantment Hate. Scavenging Ooze for Graveyard Hate. You have Anoint with Affliction as cheap exile. Ghost Vacuums for Graveyard Hate. And then Duress for Hand Hate. We then go to Jeskai Oculus. So this one here, we see a copy of Joshua, just kind of playing into the draw, discard style effects. Kind of the core of the deck, draw, discard, bin an Oculus as your ideal card, and then you bring it back with Helping Hand, or actually this one's not even playing Recommission, so it's just leveraging the Helping Hand. You will have Shelter by Ghosts, cheap removal. It's basically just draw, discard with profs. So similar to the Cauldron deck, the mana's a bit worse. You don't play VV in this version, but you can make big creatures and kind of go from there. Extra combats with FOMO, Maradu Maiko. You'll see some similarities in terms of the lists. We'll probably actually compare right after this to the VV Cauldron one for comparison. I think it works nicely. Graveyard Hate, Unable to Scream, just catch all kind of removal, good against Shieldred and stuff. Cards that are usually harder to deal with. Destroy Evil, got a reprint in the Commander set. So we have just big things, Enchantment Hate, Rest in Peace, Common Removal Hate. Exercise deals with all common Graveyard Hates. And bigger things, Disdainful Stroke, negate cheap counters along with Normalize, Sheltered for the red-based or Gruul, kind of aggro-ish decks. Brotherhood's End is a sweeper, Lauren, Artifact, Enchantment Hate. And if your opponent's bringing in a lot of Graveyard Hate, you can bring Chandra in here. Just gives you an alternate angle of attack. So this should be the VV Cauldron deck. So Ezio Dispezio, 25 and 7, just as an example into Mythic. But the VV Cauldron deck is using basically the combination of Agatha's Soul Cauldron. If you put VV underneath it, any of your creatures with counters get the VV mana ability. And most of your creatures are naturally going to have more base power than VV unless it gets going. If you have multiple VVs under it, you get multiple instances of activating it. So with that, you're able to just churn through your deck. You're able to use Winter Night Stories, just draw, discard, draw, discard, draw, discard. You could eventually put a Thrill Seeker under the Cauldron as well, and then any of your creatures can fling. Prof's Edict puts a bunch of counters on things as well, so you can just ping them to death with VV. You can make very large creatures, get extra combats with FOMO, and then you can fling these creatures at your opponent afterwards. In the grindier games, you have Enduring Curiosity, just play more of a fair matchup if they're attacking your graveyard. Scorching Shot deals with Shieldred and bigger stuff. Negate cheap counters. Draconautics Engineer, a different way to kind of play where you're able to give any of your creatures the ability to make dragons. You can haste out stuff, so it's a different kind of angle of attack in those matchups there. Braid deals the most common hate pieces, Unable to Scream, like we mentioned, for a lot of like the bigger things, harder to deal with stuff that Izzet normally can't deal with. Spell Pierce, Cheap Disruption, Lithomantic Barrage for Kaidos, Bezas, stuff of that nature. Azorius Control. So this one here is playing a little bit bigger. We see an Ugin on the top end. You have Hornlock Whale, just tempo element, deals with early threats and has a flash threat later. Meringue River Regent, again, early looting, late game, kind of 6-7 body that resets a couple of your opponent's permanents. Elspeth as another win condition. Most of the decks have gone to Ultima. This also deals with like Monument or like Cauldron, deals with a couple random artifacts. Could be even a mix with Sunfall, but Sunfall's rotating. Beza helps you stabilize, and then you have your lockdown, stock up to refill. Seeing Dreams of Laguna just as a card draw that kind of gives you 2-in-1 kind of effects, cheap kind of removals. No Elspeth Spite in the main. That's a card you could consider. Good against all the Dimir small creatures, good against Enduring Curiosity because it exiles as well. We see it in the side, change the equation, cheap counters, defabricates, I guess like heavy enchantment decks, not too many artifacts. Can also counter target triggered or activated ability. So kind of a Tishana counterspell-esque effect, along with Tishana's. Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate. You have River Churn, Monument, and Jace for the slower matchups. You just mill out your opponent. And then Overlord of the Mistmoors. When you want to just kind of go more mid-rangey, helps you kind of gum up the board, stabilize it. Works well against like Dimir and stuff, since you can chump up their flyers. Orzhov Ketramose is a deck that's popped up this week, 57%. So black-white, kill everything, exile everything. You have Ketramose that draws you more cards. When things go into exile, then it can become a pretty menacing life-linking body once 7 or more cards are in exile. Beza helps you stabilize, and then you have Kaya as a win condition. You have Fountain Ports in the mana base, as well as Restless Fortress. You have Deadly Cover-Up, which can just exile, help turn on both from collecting evidence on your side and then taking out key pieces from your opponent's side. And then just pretty much like kill and exile, eat away at the hand in exile, sack and exile their graveyard, Soul Search. Like if Oculus is playing against this, they're in for a bad time. You also have 4 Cease Desist, Graveyard Hate, and then destroys all artifacts and enchantments on the flip side, which is very powerful. Pit of Offerings, it's a land that can also eat away at your opponent's graveyard. Demolition Fields, this deck's just using some lands as sideboard options. If you have to deal with like a lot of non-creature lands, stuff like that. Against Dimir, they incidentally have like 5 creature lands, which a lot of the stuff of this deck is a sorcery speed in some of its removals, so having that as an option is impactful. Things like Legion to Ashes don't do well against creature lands. You have the End in here, just more catch-all removal, Lockdown for the Lord of the Ground decks, Betrayal for Edict and Graveyard Hate, Sheoldred's Edict again. For Planeswalkers, you have that coverage there against like a Results Kaido. Exercise, just flexible removal. Basically just kill things in different ways. Deck. We have Golgari Roots. So this deck here is built around Insidious Roots. This one's at 56%. So Insidious Roots, whenever a card leaves your graveyard, a creature, you get to create a plant and then put counters on your other plants. With Tyvar in play, your plants tap for mana right away. You're able with Osteomancer Adept to start kind of chaining together creature effects. You can kind of keep self-milling potentially by foraging, playing creatures from your graveyard. That works nicely. So it gives you kind of a pseudo combo if you can start chaining together like Overlords, stuff like that. Each mana you produce with Scavenging Ooze. So you can make a creature, exile a creature with Scavenging Ooze. It makes another creature that then taps for mana, so you can kind of chain them together that way there. Llanowar Elf helps you ramp. Haywire Might deals the most hate pieces. You also have like Cauldron here that can copy mana abilities or like activate abilities. This Disruptive Stormbrood's always been really impactful when I've come up against this deck. Just early removal that shuffles back. It can be found off of like Dredger's Insight or Cash Grab, which is impactful, or even Overlord of the Baelmark, and when it comes in, it blows up a meaningful artifact or enchantment on your opponent's side. Skyfisher Spider deals with just a lot of non-creature permanents. Go for the Throat as cheap removal. You have Dark Confidant. If your opponent's going after the graveyard a lot, you can kind of just go more mid-rangey. Draw some cards that way. Canker Bloom deals with hate pieces. Against bigger stuff, just Dragon Sniper. Vigilance Reach, Death Touch holds back a lot of attackers. Duress is cheap hand hate, and then goes Vacuum for graveyard hate. So there's this Gruul Delirium list. It's at 55%. It's the one that's kind of all in. 4 Tursas, the kind of Overprotect package. These lists have been doing pretty poorly overall. Like 55% is the highest. Most are like low, medium 50s. I've been interested in looking at how Dimir's been evolving, or sorry, Gruul, since I need to pivot my paper deck. I also have most of the pieces for this, moving from the mono red or like Innkeeper talent lists. So this is kind of the direction that some people are doing online that I like a little bit more. So this went 5-0. There's a couple of variations recently in MTGO tournaments. Seeing it still take advantage of the graveyard, but not be all graveyard focused. So you still have like the Violent Urge. This one's got Snakeskin Veil. You can play Overprotect in place of that. I might like Overprotect more since it pushes through a bit more damage. Still have your Breakouts. You still have your Bushwhacks in here. This one's on 3 NTs. We have 2 Tursas and then full set of Screaming Nemesis in the main. Some are playing the Boros Dragon or the Mono White Dragon with the Red Omen deal 5 because you can find that off of like Breakout or any of your kind of self-mill effects because it's permanent. It's another card you can look at in that regard there. But I kind of like this configuration. I do like the Overprotects. I would probably play some numbers of those, probably over Snakeskin Veil. I really like Overprotect in the deck, but I like this version because you're not all in on the graveyard. I probably would trim on some inties. I've never liked more than 1 or 2. It's a little slow in that regard. I've also personally liked Paw Patch Recruit, just as a way against Dimir, kind of forces them into awkward situations, but this kind of pushes through some trample, forces the discard to give you some value, and then Nemesis is just hard for some decks to deal with on its own. Canker Bloom deals with the most common hate pieces. You can play Haywire Might, you can play Heritage Reclamation, you can play Paw Patch Formation. There's a lot of different options in that space, but basically this is your deal with Artifact Enchantment spot. Lithomantic Barrage is Beza, big blue thing, stuff like that. Torch is cheap removal, Sunspine Links. In here against the greedier mana bases, you are playing 7 basics in here to take advantage, then Ghost Vacuum for the Graveyard Hate. So I'm going to feature this one over the other Gruul deck. We have Jeskai Dragons or Jeskai Control. So elements of the blue-white control deck, your Ultimas, your Meringue River Regions, Bezas, Lockdowns, all that jazz. This one's also got Shikos in here, so lets you recast things like Stock Up or to Rediscover the Way or even Lightning Helix. And you also see Parting Gust, which works nice with your big dragons or all your creatures because you can just reset them and get that ETB value again. You also get cheap counters in Dispelling Exhale. In your sideboard, you got Fire Magic as a cheap sweeper, Graveyard Hate, Devote Decree, blue or black and red hate, Disdainful Stroke for cheap counters, Exercise like we've mentioned, Conceals Flanker, just flexible Graveyard Hate that flashes in, Tidebinder for activated abilities, and then you have your Overlords in the more mid-rangey focused matchups. Like I said, the Yuna deck is not doing well. Yuna is at 51 and 50%, so we still have like a reasonable over 220 games between the decks and nothing's really showing up. So again, showing this more so I don't get the questions. You could certainly win. I've seen people win with Yuna. It's just that this not doing consistently enough right now in the current meta. 2 decks I want to show that are doing pretty well for folks. Faltadir went 21 and 5 into like Mythic, just the edge of numbers with a Sultai Control deck. So Fangkeeper's Familiar, kind of a Mystic Snake style effect. 3 mana with Flash, either gain life and surveil, destroy an enchantment, or counter target creature spell. We also see Emmet Selch. So 3 mana, 2/4, enters or attacks, you basically draw a discard, and then if there are 14 more cards in your graveyard, you transform it. It becomes a 6/6 Vigilance. During your turn, you may play cards from your graveyard, and then if a token would be put, a card or a token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So kind of gives you an engine to play out of your graveyard. Whole bunch of control elements, basically just a bunch of removal, Syncopated cheap counters, stab in this one. You have Aurora Procession to rebuy stuff. Rakshasha's Bargain is basically 3 mana, pseudo stock up, instant speed. You kind of dig, put 2 into your hand and 2 into your graveyard. You have Deadly Cover Up, Ancient Cornucopia helps you ramp and gains your life, and then Meringue and Ugin on the top end. Sideboard, just more sweepers with Scavenger Region, Deadly Cover Up, mill for kind of the mid-rangey matchups along with Outrageous Robbery, just some more removal, negate as cheap counters, and Heritage Reclamation. Gives you a pretty nice spread, Artifact Enchantment, and Graveyard Hate in that one there. And then lastly, one that I've seen a bit kind of popping up here and there on the ladder, it's basically, this one's Mardu, there's been Boros, but it's a Discover deck. This one's 28 and 6 by Avosili. They are Mythic 697. And this one here is playing a really cool curve. So with Geological Appraiser, you're always going to hit Sage of the Skies, which then counts as a second spell cast. So you get 2/3 flying lifelinkers. So you kind of, for 4 mana, get 8 power on the board over 3 bodies. You have Inevitable Defeat as just kind of another removal spell. You're circumventing the curve by having Twin Moss Stormbrood, Harvester of Misery, and Virtue Persistence. All that can serve as 2 mana removal options. You are playing, in this deck here, 1 Force, interesting enough, with the Fable Passage, both to help with Leyline, but in the sideboard you have access to Cease Desist in here, another card that kind of takes advantage of these split effects. So you kind of play in that avenue there. Then you have Quint that can help you discover into smaller things, Trumpeting Carnosaur. So really kind of cool configuration of the deck. Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, Lockdown for the aggressive decks, Cease Desist, Graveyard Hate, and then really good against like Unidex, Domain if you run into it still. You have Unholy Annex for the grindier matchups. I can not tell you Charred Foyer, Warped Space. So being of your upkeep, exile top card of your library. You may play it this turn. And then once per turn, you may pay 0 rather than the mana cost from a card in exile. So again, just kind of more for the grindier matchups. And then Restricted Office, just another kind of sweeper effect. So it's kind of cool how you're playing these rooms to circumvent the mana cost, so that you're able to kind of have these effects that don't get hit by things like Geological Appraiser in this case. So that is it for the week. Good luck those playing. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.